Senator Chris Van Hollen is a Democrat of Maryland. He serves on the Appropriations Committee. He's been very outspoken about the potential loss of SNAP benefits, and he joins me now. How serious do you see this SNAP cliff? Do you feel like we're in a kind of brinksmanship that's going to lead to some sort of deal, or we're about to drive over that cliff?
Well, right now, Donald Trump seems to want to drive right over that cliff. As you said, he is deliberately choosing to withhold food from 42 million Americans, 16 million of them children, for political points. He wants to take these kids and 40 million Americans hostage as part of weaponizing the Trump shutdown. Now, as you mentioned, you have a federal district court judge who said today that they may require that these food benefits be provided, because if you read the law, one thing is clear. There's nothing that requires Trump to withhold this food, even though that's what they're doing. It may be that they have to actually provide the food because Congress set aside funds for this kind of emergency purpose, and they're withholding them. So we'll see what the judge says. And as you mentioned, they're in court. I mean, I want everyone to understand the Trump administration is in court saying to a judge, don't make us feed 40 million Americans during this shutdown. That's the Trump position, and everybody must understand that this is the intentional infliction of distress, intentional infliction of trauma. I call it pure out sadism. They are enjoying the pain that they're imposing on the American people.
I'm going to try my best to give a good faith rendering of the most charitable version of their argument on this. So I saw J.D. Vance today outside the White House, and the argument is the shutdown's bad and it's going to get worse. To the extent that you allow the shutdown to linger without people feeling the effects of it, such as lost paychecks, SNAP benefits, that removes the pressure to end the shutdown and the government opened again, which everyone wants. And so if we sign on to Josh Hawley's bill that he's proposed that would allow SNAP benefits, if we don't fight in court to stop SNAP from paying out, we're just going to prolong the shutdown, and that's bad. What do you say to that?
So it's important to understand exactly what the vice president is saying. He's saying that the Trump administration will pose unnecessary pain in the form of withholding food assistance to 42 million Americans to try to pressure people to reopen the government. Look, Chris, I want to reopen the government. This is why I voted 7 times to reopen the government, but without giving Donald Trump a blank check to engage in lawless activity like they're doing right now on the SNAP program, and also dealing with the ticking time bomb on health care costs, which are going to be shooting through the roof for tens of millions of Americans. And so what J.D. Vance is saying is, well, let's make 40 million Americans go hungrier so that they won't continue to insist on bringing down health care prices for the American people, right? He wants to avoid that debate, and they're perfectly happy to let that ticking time bomb go off and explode on the American people, sending health care prices through the roof. This is what it's all about. We want to open the government, but we also don't want to impose all this economic pain on the American people. And as you said, Donald Trump, what was the one promise everybody remembers? On day one, he's going to bring down prices. He's doing exactly the opposite.
One of the places that we've seen some interesting bipartisanship is on this tariff question. Obviously, the president in China today, and I was really pretty struck by this. I think it's flown under the radar, but I think it's rather significant because defections from Republican senators on substantive policy have been so rare. There's now been 3 votes, one of them withdrawing, I think, the state of emergency that was declared to facilitate the Canada tariffs, a state of emergency that had to do with Canada trafficking fentanyl, by the way, which I'm a little skeptical that that holds up factually, to repeal outright the Brazil tariffs, and one more vote. Do you think there's something happening there, that those votes have gone the way they have?
I do, Chris. I think it's a clear sign that some Republicans are actually listening to their constituents who are dealing with these rising prices. Just today, I met with some Maryland small businesses who said they are getting clobbered by the Trump tariffs. So I want to salute my colleague, Senator Kaine, who forced these votes. And it is a sign that the president is failing to meet that big promise he made in terms of, bringing prices down, and in fact is doing just the opposite. And as you indicated at the top of your program, this whole charade with President Xi in China is really pathetic, because what you have is, Donald Trump, the arsonist, who through his tariffs sort of lit this problem on fire, and now wants to get credit somehow for putting out the fire that he started. But that fire is still raging because tariffs are still in place across the board, and Americans are hurting. You're finding people having to pay those much higher prices for groceries. And you quoted, the chair of the Federal Reserve, who in their very dry way, I mean, these are, Chairman Powell always says things in sort of a monotone, is saying prices are going up and the economy and jobs may be going down. This is the Trump economy.
If you were to ask me how the shutdown were to end, and there was some activity today that we reported where you've got, some communications and meetings happening across party lines among senators. So if you were to ask me, well, how do I think this ends? I think it ends probably with a vote to reopen the government and a real promise that the next vote is the subsidies, right? Or something like that, some sort of staggered thing, or they're together. And I guess the question is there enough trust right now to make a deal like that? Like, given what they've done with the power of the purse in the executive, do you even have the necessary trust one would have to work out whatever the inevitable deal is going to be to reopen the government?
Well, not at this point in time, Chris. And in fact, the only Republican in Washington who matters is Donald Trump. And he's not been in Washington, as you pointed out, for the last 10 days. I mean, he's been tramping all over the world, talking to others and not talking about reopening the government here. But right now, he has total control over Republicans in the House and the Senate. I mean, they are rubber stamp Congress. There's a reason Steve Bannon called them the Duma the other day, right? Sort of the Russian rubber stamp equivalent here. And so I think the question is whether Donald Trump, now that he's home, is going to recognize that so many of the people that he promised he would help on prices are actually suffering because they're about to experience those huge increases in health care costs. I mean, this is one place where Marjorie Taylor Greene is being true to the MAGA voters, and Donald Trump and Republicans have thrown them, under the bus. I mean, they betrayed them. So maybe now that Donald Trump's come home, he'll recognize that imposing unnecessary pain on the American people in the form of these much higher health care costs or denying them food assistance, that's really not such a good idea after all.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, who represents the state of Maryland, thank you so much.